Hey guys, Fatty here. So Miss Bluey wanted to give you guys the High Priest guide. If you don't know who she is, she does cover current Rue, and she is going to be playing Rue Classic as well. She actually is the main High Priest for King Wawa's party. I didn't know this until after the fact, but this little guide and collab that we did, I found out after that this was actually her first time speaking English, which was crazy because she did so well. Hopefully, you guys enjoy and hop on over to her channel as well and show some love. Hey guys, it's Elaf again. This is going to be the High Priest guide that we're going to be making. And right now, I am going to be featuring one of our officers in the guild who also helped us lead ourselves to the rank 1 and remain undefeated in the closed beta. And she is going to be introducing herself, the one and only Miss Bluey. Would you like to tell the audience about yourself?
Hi, my name is Blee, and I am a VTuber. My contents focus on Ragnarok, especially Ragnarok Orange. My main class is High Priest, and I focus on a few tanky, beautiful PvP.
Sounds good. And I take it you've also played Ragnarok Origin LNA? Was it LNA or global?
Yes, Perm Terraform.
Ooh, okay. All right. So today, essentially, what we're gonna be doing here is kind of like feature your build that you've come up with and had really good results as well in the not only in Dimensional but also in Guild League and Imperium Overrun. And we're gonna be putting up. Can you tell us a little bit of like what you're gonna be presenting us with here today? Tell us a little bit about your build before we go into the stats.
All right, first let's start with the PvP build, which is the support build. One of the best thing about High Priest is having this flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Since my main focus is PvP, this build is focused on tank and survivability,
Mm-hmm.
so I can keep res my guild and my team.
Exactly. I mean, one of the most like valuable things probably in Guild League and Dimension is going to be resurrecting your team, and that's why like sustain comps, the 2-2-1 comp right now is so strong. But I'm pretty sure like one of the things that they're gonna be very curious about is how you distribute your stats, the stat distribution for your build.
Yeah, in the static section,
Mm-hmm.
I distribute points in the vitality because of the max AGP percentage burst, as well as PDEF and MDEF. It's also crucial for stay alive.
Mm-hmm.
I also invest in intelligence to increase the magic attack, which is burst healing, and that also helps push the variable casting time.
Exactly. All right. So up on the screen, and we're gonna put up the exact values of the stats. And what about the since we've covered like the basic stats, right? Like what about the substats? What about like the other stats that you tend to build, like your attributes, for example? What are we looking at here for High Priest?
Looking in my character attributes, initially I focus on demi-human reduction and medium-sized damage reduction.
Hmm.
However, attributes like crit resistance, physical damage reduction, and magic damage reduction are also vital. My first is priority is P damage reduction, M damage reduction, and PvP reduction. I also plan to move into the Creeps Resistance next because it was start to becoming a issue. But that's something takes time to reach all the idle value.
Exactly. So something that we did notice in the CBT, especially for the lower crit value classes, one of them being Paladin, for example, people were able to build enough crit resist to actually like almost completely deny you of doing critical attacks. Obviously, that's gonna be a lot harder for Synex classes, which has way higher crit values than like Paladin, for example. But again, it is a necessity. Otherwise, like they're just going to do full damage towards you. And the good thing about crit resist is that as soon as you build it, the classes like Paladin, like Sacred Paladin, which is a bit of a nightmare in the early mid game, you deny once you deny their ability to hit you with crits, that means you also deny any type of crit damage cards that they have. So that's kind of like the importance of like crit resists when it comes to that. But after the mentioned stats that we have, let's take a look at your skills. So I'm a little curious, how do you do your skills as a high priest? That way people know what skill points to not like waste on certain skills.
Regarding skills, this I how I distribute my points. I think this policy is fairly intuitive depending on your specific gameplay needs. But I show it all my setup so you have a solid base for your character.
Hmm.
I put points in the Lexi because it's very important in the early game with a few players having the murder cards.
Yeah.
I use the same distribution for PvE support, only swap a few skills on the auto bar and menu slots.
Lex Divina definitely huge, especially even when people actually have the Marduk card, right? Because like the anti CC cards are kind of like nerfed. I feel, oh, not I feel, but like
Yeah.
we've seen them like really do get nerfed, so they're a lot less effective than they used to be, and they're more reliant on timing that you have zero control over. But yeah, so now that we've kind of like covered the specifics of the skills, right? Like we'll throw it up on the screen here. And what about guild skills? Like I know sometimes people are really, like fame being like one of the more scarce currencies in the game, right? Like one of the main places that you can really get it is Juperos, which is pretty limited. What are we doing for like guild skills here with the limited fame that we have?
I focus mainly on NDP and defensive nodes. Of course, ignore defense is also important for PvE, especially if you're using the Magnus build to farm. But again, my priority was defense in HP. PT, pet ADP was also focused because of the child of over pet.
Hmm.
Child over our pet.
Yeah, child of birth. Yeah, exactly. So one of the most premier defensive pets in the game can actually save your life when you get a sword if you have your child of birth pet out, and does, even with sustained damage, does allow you a bit of like kind of like breathing room before it eventually goes down, right? Because again, we don't really have pet equipment here in this version, which might be for the best. That is actually one of the first times that I've seen somebody recommend pet HP, and it makes complete sense, especially when you've already filled out the rest of your defensive guild skill stats. Not everybody is going to be able to level up the laboratory early, so it kind of makes sense. You're going to end up maxing out your initial stats first, and then you can start investing in that. So one of the main things that I usually get a question of, regardless of like what build people do, is feathers. Regardless of class, it's always gonna be, what are your feathers? How does a high priest build their feather setup?
For the distribution, I use four golds in one purple feather
Hmm.
for both PvP and PvE. I decided not to focus on PvE specific states. PvP is my priority. The tanker I am in PvP, the better is for my team and guild. This
Exactly.
setup is to help us in PvE survival since we are the damage dealers.
Hmm.
We just need to stay alive to keep in helping. In the CBT, I use Dark Light Feathers.
Hmm.
Focus heavily on Dark for the P damage, M damage reduction, and PvP damage reduction.
Hmm.
I try to have the last two for. I try to have it, and the last two of each is very slot.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know reason the tiers take time, a budget, so you can work on the settings in the meantime. So my essentials was the Soul Tier for PDF, MDF, and Order. I highly recommend focus on Order for the starts because it's provided P damage, M damage reduction, and PDF.
Hmm.
If you start it early, you are the feather, you will be at the right level when you need it most.
Hmm.
I also use a night timing and space. Might swap the space one letter based on one or based on my what I had available.
All right. Okay. So order feather definitely for the purple, and then we hit up a little bit with the night and time and space and time, a little bit here. But like you said, you are thinking of swapping out that space later. So we're gonna put up the current build on here later. And again, there are going to be a lot of balance updates that are happening. We don't know how much harder they're going to try to nerf these feathers. So again, that's why we have Bluey here. And if you are trying to make or trying to follow like certain guides for High Priest, we're going to try to make more and more changes and updates and videos about these things so as to keep you up to date, right? So after the feathers is actually the medals.
I focus on P damage and damage reduction, plus a bit of magic attack and magic damage because the magic damage also provide max ADP.
Mm-hmm.
Reductions are my must-have attributes here.
Good old classic P damage, M damage reduction, plus a bit of M attack, which is like the base one, the first one, and additional M damage. But for the most part, a lot of focus on P damage and M damage reduction. Currently, in the current meta, there's a lot of P damage going around. So, but at the same time, you also don't want to ignore your M damage reduction. Eventually, magic users are going to start ramping up. So that makes a lot of sense. And then something that a lot of people will tend to get confused about because it is kind of confusing is going to be in your mount menu, your barding. So in terms of barding, what are we looking at for High Priest?
I end up focus a lot of stage in Barding for the P damage and PvP reduction. Troll is often seen as a DPS choice early on to the PvP damage.
Mm-hmm.
For starters, Strange Barding and Protector Barding must be more interest because of the rising and size reductions. They offer reduction against small and medium enemies, per TP Doran always small and normal characters are medium.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on this is much better for your damage mitigation, especially if your limit time is resources.
All right, all right. So a bit of a pro tip there. Dorams are small and normal characters are medium. So everybody coming into the game that have been on hiatus before Dorams were released, that's a little bit of a pro tip and a little bit of tidbit for you there. So now that we are done with the barding, now the other one too, one of the more expensive things to really invest on, and most probably one of the most time-consuming progression stuff because you really have to wait for some of these shards is the cards. What are we looking at for cards here?
I used what I had available during the CBT, since this was
Mm-hmm.
a test. I didn't hunt for the perfect cards 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
but I got to look with a few.
Mm-hmm.
Weapon, boa card, a good magic attack.
Mm-hmm.
Shield, Tara Frog is essential. The second slot is up to you.
Mm-hmm.
Armor Cornutus to make your armor indestructible. Garment, I use a Choco card to test Flee too. It's interesting, and since you get many fragments for Dimensional Drill,
Yeah.
it's easy to get. Alternatively, Orc Baby for neutral reduction and Flee.
Gotcha.
Shoes Choose Moonlight Flower for the 7-day login and Sorry for SP recovery,
Mm-hmm.
Max HP, and P damage reduction. Accessories, I grab an Osiris card immediately. I consider Osiris indispensable for supports. I also use a Magic Attack card, but for the option launcher, I plan to use a Maxed Poppering card for the pyramid reduction. Headgear, Marduk to avoid silence. Many priests use Lexi. If you are getting blinded a lot, go for David. Face, mouth, back, rose ornaments. Face is important. For mouth, baby pacify or doppelganger puppet. For back, JTB puppet for basic reduction or deviling puppet for PvP reduction. For custom, get the Baphomet puppet.
All right, sounds good. Funny thing is, like, I didn't even know about like pouring card tech. You actually get at P and or physical and magic damage reduction from those. So that's a key thing definitely to know. I myself didn't even use that because I was too busy using Horon cards and Smoky cards, pure pouring cards. But That's really good to know. So for the most part, especially if you're a new player, these Rose ornaments, these baby pacifier cards, they are stuff that you can get with shards. And then later down the line, when you get the auction from like Guild League and everything, you can start thinking about those doppelganger puppet cards, the GTB puppet cards, Devling puppet cards. But those are things that you can kind of like work on down the line once you have a bit of a surplus of like gold, right? So now that we are out of the whole card situation here, which is no, it's a good thing we covered it because like you definitely do not want to mess these things up because they do get expensive, and if you mess it up, you're kind of a sitting duck for a few weeks even. Next part that we have is going to be our divine armaments and accessories. So what do we go for here when it comes to divine armaments? What are our equipments and accessories?
And I recommend the Diastefo for sporting is a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Shield, I really like Shadow Close after plus 15. It's giving magic reduction. You could also use the Immune Shield for more healing. Or Overkill Shield after plus 10 is already matches the Shadow Close reduction. About the set is the Goblin set is mandatory if you want to be a true tank.
Mm-hmm. And then I know we discussed this before as well, which is like the child of birth pets, right? Which is solid always. Baphomet Junior. Actually, we just wanted to reiterate a little bit on the pets here with child of earth, right? It is confirmed, by the way, that we are getting the Baphomet Junior event thing. So just getting that thing to max tier and having it under deploy is going to give you a lot of free stats for HP, SP, and your offensive stats as well. And another thing is obviously Squidget. Squidget is going to be good for your buffs. It doesn't really press forward, so it's not going to get itself killed if you're not out of position. And then the King Piggy is going to be another one because recently it did get changed to int scaling on the survivability on it. It's not like how it was in global where the pet itself got essentially what is a free res. And I think you mentioned that you want to focus on Child of Earth for the initial focus, right? To be able to tank more, But now that we've actually like kind of covered that, kind of reiterated that a little bit more, even though we touched upon it before. Can you tell me a little bit about accessories? What are we looking at here for accessories?
Looking for the Angelic Ring of the level 85.
Mm-hmm.
All the level 99, you will want to Divine Queen bracelets to activate the Light Prism combo effect, with significant boost to healing effectiveness.
All right, so good progression our accessories as well. I'm gonna go for the angelic ring. I believe that's dropped by doppelganger, right? And then divine queen bracelets down the line as well. And then after that, what about actually? Here's another crucial thing: is the enchants. What are we looking for when it comes to enchants here?
Oh, the weapon, I went for variable cast time.
Mm-hmm.
On the shield, damage reduction stats go as defensible as possible. Physical per damage and damage reduction, per death and death. Magic attacking into VT AL design for PvP technique where possible.
Exactly. All right. So just as a quick tip, top left, which is like part of your headgear caution, bottom left and bottom right in your inventory slots. Once you see those are the ones that can get these PvP techniques, which is very crucial that you get it just because you get a huge, huge chunk of PvP stats just from that alone. So definitely take advantage of that. If you don't have it and you're doing PvP, you are going to be in a huge disadvantage and people will be doing percent damage more than you. It's an easy tasks to try to get those PvP stats, especially if you get lucky in the initial rolls. So definitely get that stuff. And again, when it comes to enchants, we definitely do not want to forget about crit resist because currently, and it might change, is in the meta, crit classes are kind of king right now. So that's when we start to kind of like consider crit resist in this regard. And then I believe you also had, and especially for grinding in PvP, or sometimes maybe just like choke point control, you also had a Magnus build, right? I kind of want to hear more about this, especially after the Magnus nerfs.
Now let's look at the Magnus build. It stays distributed between Inti, Dexy, and Luke. Luke also increased magic attack. This build lets you farm smoothly with high damage. I managed to get my Magnus costing 1 point per second during the CBT.
Mm-hmm.
The skills are the priority is Magnus Exorcismus of the level 10. You can put turn on dice of the level 10 if you use it a lot, but I personally don't.
Mm-hmm.
I also put points in the suffragium. A bounding just in case I need to provide support while I'm on farming mode. About the setup skills, here is my out skill bar for farming and I'll show you on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
About the incants Igar, I focus everything on Linty, Magic Attack, and Dex. Ignore MDF is also important. Use your rolling element weapon to boost damage and reduce fixed casting time, and the sprint sight for your armor.
All right, all right, all right. So that pretty much covers the entirety of the build a little bit there. Touch a bit on the Magnus build there because especially after the nerfs, it gets a little bit rough, but it is still something that you need to use, especially when you're grinding because we don't really have Bonk Priest anymore. And it's also something that you can use still in very choke point heavy scenarios, right? Like you might not be able to put down as many Magnus anymore with the way that AoEs work in Ragnarok Origin. Having as many stacks of AoE as you can is always going to be effective, even though, unlike before, we don't really have the bound on Magnus anymore. We don't really have the ignore death on Magnus anymore, but at the end of the day, it still is a skill that hits hard and is always going to have some use, whether it's PvE and whether it's in big GVGs where AoEs are always omnipresent, right? Bluey, thank you so much. If you would please have any, if you have any closing statements, let the audience know.
Thanks for having me. Sorry about the English.
No, no, you're good. You're
uh,
completely fine.
I hope this helped you out. I really like to share my channel with the SEA community.
Definitely knowledge drop there. And hopefully that helped you guys. Again, if you have any questions at all, you guys can go ahead and head over to Bluey's channel, or if you can, could leave it in the comments as well. And if she has time, she'll go ahead and answer those questions. Have her socials up on the screen. Hopefully that helped you guys a lot and offered a little bit more guidance, knowing that it came from somebody who really went and kind of deep dived the CBT here and participated in pretty solid matches in Dimension and Guild League and Emp Overrun. Until next time, guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.